This is my home at the southern tip of Africa. This place is special to me because it's the origin of our species, where we first lived in harmony with animals. My name is Anna. I've studied the ancient skills, and I'm so passionate about awakening a sense of communicating with animals in us modern humans. I'm dedicating my life to this because I believe that humanity is suffering from a great separation sickness, a real disconnect from nature. My sense is that by understanding animals more deeply, we can begin to heal ourselves. Sometimes being a human bridge between non-human animals and my kind is difficult. I see both sides of that bridge. And the two pictures don't match up with each other.
Gilchrist, he's a psychiatrist and author of The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World.
Two hemispheres have styles, takes, if you like, on the world. They see things differently, they prioritize different things, they have different values.
McGilchrist claims that the left hemisphere of the brain is gradually colonizing our experience of the world with potentially disastrous implications.
A way of thinking which is reductive, mechanistic, has taken us over. We behave like people who had right hemisphere damage. It's made us enormously powerful. It's enabled us to become wealthy. But it's also meant that we've lost the means to understand the world.
His revolutionary theory has attracted prominent supporters worldwide, comparing him to Freud and Darwin.
I think The Master and His Emissary was possibly one of the most important books I read.
The idea that there is a distinction between those two perspectives seems to me correct. And I see it all the time in my own field of clinical psychology.
I kind of had one revelation after another. I mean, it just explained an incredible number of things that I've always been slightly puzzled about.
Could the problems of the modern world be influenced by an imbalance in the human brain? And what does that imply about our future? For Ian McGilchrist, the problem is not only bad politics or a warped economic system. The problem is inside our modern brain.
Start with to reconstruct the sensory world of autism. Because, again, to remind you, the best theory is the iceberg theory of autism. What we see, these are autistic behaviors. Of course, they help us to diagnose autism, of course. But they don't tell us what is going on and why. What about our perception? It's like theory of mind, right? We are born with our perception, we develop it and whatever. Is it perfect? Or our interpretation of the world is based on our memory experiences? I want to show you that normal, so-called normal perception is absolutely not perfect, and it is not accurate. If you look at this picture, what can you see? Come on. Any ideas? Dalmatian, leopard, somebody said. Yes, anything else? Because I will give you the right answer now. If you, again, look at this picture very, very carefully, and I will tell you what it is. And you will recognize it immediately, I promise. Because these are black spots on the white background. Right? But as we try to find meaning in everything, we try to interpret whatever we are shown, right? That's what I'm trying to say. We see sometimes more than really exists in front of our eyes. Again, the real world and our mental image of this world differ. For example, again, what is it? Now you know, right? Anyway, because many see the letter, some stairs, or whatever. These are broken lines, right? And then we can interpret whatever we see. And again, another thing, yes, The triangle doesn't exist, right? There are these three black things. But we see it, whether we want it or not, right? Because we've got it in our mind already. So what we do, we take a shortcut. We look at something without all this process to interpret what it is, and we come to the conclusion, right? Oh, this is a triangle. And what is more, with age, we distort everything even more. The older we become, the more our perception is distorted. For example, if the question is, who is the tallest, right? First, some people say it is the person who is further away, right? From our experience, we know that. But actually, they are the same height. So I do try to show you that we are so sort of also not perfect in our perception. This process is very important. What if one sense is absent? For example, the person is blind or deaf or whatever. And sometimes they have autism as well. But those who have no autism but have no vision, for example, they go through the same process, absolutely the same process. But they don't look at something, they touch it or smell it or whatever. And then they interpret it, that it is a book, and if it is in Braille, they can read it, right? So they're absolutely the same process. In autism, it is very different. This is from Tito's book. You know Tito, a boy who was considered to be very low functioning, but actually his IQ is much, much higher than the average. And he writes books. That's what he said. When I pick up a book, I might turn the pages and sniff each page before looking at the pictures in it. That's what my son did. You know, like I bought him a lot of books with pictures, but he didn't even look at it. He liked the sound or sometimes the smell. Someone else may tear a page or two. They do like the sound of it as well, or just tactile sensations. And another person with autism may totally ignore it because his perception would be directed towards some other aspects of environment. So the problem is, it is very hard for us to imagine that they see everything differently. They are not blind, are they? Or hear everything differently. Can you imagine how hard it is for them to realize that their perception is very different from the perception of 99% of the population? So a typical thought they might have is, and this is from an American, Spicer, he's on the spectrum, there is something wrong with me. I can't do things right. Everyone is mad at me. No matter how hard I try, something goes wrong. Other people can do things I can't. It must be my fault that I'm having so much trouble. And he wants us to experience what it might be like. He asks us to imagine that, for example, you are colorblind and you cannot distinguish between green and red. And you're a student at school or college, and your teacher hands out sheets of paper with instructions of what to do. But unfortunately, instructions are printed in red on the green background. So everyone but you would start working. Only you would sit there looking at this sheet of paper thinking, what is going on? Why can't I understand that? So I think it's a brilliant illustration. You know, don't forget, we have different perspectives, right? So that we see the world differently. Not our perception is better than theirs and whatever. And many autistic people talk about it. Temple Grandin, she is an advocate of this sensory perceptual differences research because, as she says, many people cannot even imagine that an alternate sensory reality exists because we live in the same physical world, but we perceive it so differently because our senses work differently. And these are just a few quotes from Thomas McKean, a person with an Asperger syndrome. I don't think that what I see is what you see. That is, unless what you see are vague clouds and shadows of substance. Or Ross Blackburn, to me, the outside world is a confusing mass of sights and sounds. It is totally baffling and incomprehensible. Again, McKean. I believe sensory anomalies may be at the root of many, if not all, behaviors that seem inappropriate and bizarre. And many of them talk about the same thing, that our senses work differently. And that is why their behaviors, and this is very important, autistic behaviors, we call them sometimes, right? Their behaviors are meaningful and functional. And as Donna says, that very helpful people were trying to help her to overcome her ignorance, right? And to teach her the right behaviors. But they were ignorant themselves because they never tried to understand the way she saw the world. Another thing is, when I started this research, as I said, not many people were interested. But now there are hundreds and hundreds of research papers, articles, books on sensory dysfunction. I should be happy I am not, again, because it's not necessarily dysfunctional. Sometimes the environment makes it dysfunctional, not all the times, but sometimes. And that's why it is much more useful to use this general term, different sensory experiences. And for example, some children and adults with autism cannot tolerate fluorescent lights, because for us it is just, constant light. For them, they actually can see a 60-cycle flickering. It's like disco club, Can you imagine sitting in a room when the room goes like dark and bright? How long will you tolerate it? And if demands are being made on you, you will exhibit challenging behaviors, I'm pretty sure. And we will start our journey, if you like, through the sensory world of autism with my favorite quote. This is an Irish woman with autism, Jasmine O'Neill. That's what she says. Learning how each individual autistic person's senses function is one crucial key to understanding that person. Not social problems, communication problems, they come later. And also not all of them are problems. And just again, to conclude and start the next part of our journey, let us remember that different sensory experiences lead to different perceptual, linguistic, cognitive, and even cultural worlds. So we all live on the same planet, the same physical world, but actually we live in two parallel ones, sensory and perceptual worlds. They are very, very different. So what is the point if we cannot sort of cooperate like this, living behind this wall? And the main question today is, whose reality is more real? Causes, they are at the very bottom of the iceberg, and you can see there are so many question marks because we don't know what causes are, or we do know that there are many, and I do mean many possible causes of autism, leading to the same clinical pictures of behaviors. So what is interesting is, what is between these causes and the autistic behaviors? So, and that is why there are so many psychological theories. Some of them are very influential, and which claim they can explain autism. One of the most popular is a theory, lack of theory of mind, okay? And weak central coherence theory, and many others. But this theory of mind, it means we all, those who have no autism, the ability to perceive the mental states of others. And the researchers say autistic people, autistic children and adults, they don't understand our intentions, they don't understand our behaviors, they don't understand our emotions. Absolutely right. And they say that is why they lack theory of mind. Absolutely wrong. Because the question is, do we understand their behaviors? Do we understand the intentions? Do we understand the emotions? No, we don't. It means we lack theory of autistic mind, right? And of course, we invent, design tests to check this theory of mind. But let us think about this, that theory of mind developed in non-autistic children by the age of 4, but we can see autism well before that age. And by the way, the first symptoms we can see are sensory symptoms, not social and communication symptoms. So in autism, okay, let us agree, lack theory of mind, but again, think about independent variables. For example, when the mother looks at her baby, starts smiling, you know, and whatever, the baby says, yes, mother is smiling, she is happy, the baby learns the first grains of theory of mind. But what if, look at this stupid woman who is trying to hug her baby. If you don't see this, the baby is crying actually, and she is smiling. What will the baby learn? The baby couldn't tolerate any touch. You know what I mean? So the baby will connect. When mother is smiling, I am in pain.
In the meantime, you're over there going, oh my gosh, this is exhausting, you know, and it's really...
Well, the brain's trying to heal.
Yeah, and the brain's trying to heal, so it's more of a drainage instead of a fuel. So I encourage people, come in, 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, come in, love on us, quietly. Come in, hold my hand, say, oh my gosh, you're gonna be just fine, oh my gosh, I've got your back. So whether you're just getting up in the morning and taking responsibility for the energy you're bringing to yourself and into the world, or whether you're going in to visit someone who is in a wounded condition, or anyone, taking responsibility for the energy you bring, because the brain, at least in the right brain experience, is receiving that information.
And I love that, because it's being aware of yourself, checking in, inner compass. You know, where am I right now? What's going on within me? Why am I reacting this way to someone? Why am I not taking care of how I speak to this person?
So every interaction with every human being is, I'm coming in a space, you're coming in a space, and we have to find that moment together. So do I go to your space, you come to my space, or do we find a new space? But when you look at your life that way and you become aware of that, everything changes. Yeah. Because all of a sudden we're co-creating a moment. And don't we want to co-create a life?
Yeah. Okay? Of course it goes differently. It's not that they lack it. They make different connections. Or when we punish children, go to your room, think about your behavior. Punishment, right? For this autistic boy who is so happy to avoid all this chaotic environment, who is sitting in his room. Look how relaxed and happy he is. So again, is that a punishment? You know what I mean? The boy learns theory of mind, but making different connections, right? So, some conclusions about this. Shared experiences, shared theory of mind. No shared experiences, lack of theory of mind. So we all, not that they lack theory, we all lack theory of autistic mind.
That you have no idea what's going on inside of my head. I have no idea what's going on inside of your head. We have no idea what's really going on inside of someone else. We all have very different perceptions of reality. And somehow or another, we think because we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and a nose and a mouth and bodies that are similar, that we're experiencing the same external world. And we are not.
Okay? So who is mind blind, right? And I would take this theory a bit further. And, for example, 2 professionals who work with autism from 9 till 4, 5, or whatever, understand parents who live with autism 24/7? No. Just trust me, theoretically it is possible. In practice, no. It means professionals lack theory of parents' mind, right? But on the other hand, 2 parents who have 1, 2, 3 children on the spectrum, for example, and they want the best for their babies, understand professionals who have hundreds and limited resources? No. So parents lack theory of professionals' mind. You know what I mean? We have to learn to look at everything from different perspectives, not only with autistic people, but...
When we look at the cellular structure of the brain, we have these 4 different modules of cells. In the right brain, the emotion of the present moment, the experience of the present moment, the thinking capacity of connecting to some consciousness that is not merely within us, but around us and in every cell of our body, is what is one capacity, and that's what I gained. But as I disconnected from the left brain that connected my thinking, rational brain and my emotions of my past and my future. So to me, we have these different modules of consciousness piled up on top of one another. And as I lost the details of the external world and shifted into the present moment, then the experience of the present moment kind of faded as well, because I had no impetus, no energy for action. Then I shifted into that consciousness that exists whether I have this physical form or not.
Yeah. And of course, one of the things that's happened also more recently, and since the publication of my Stroke of Insight, is a whole new generation discovering and some rediscovering psychedelics, which I think brings up a lot of that as well.
In her book Autism and the Edges of the Known World, Olga Bogdashina writes, "A useful example of alteration of consciousness is an experiment where a so-called normal person whose sensory perceptual experiences have been changed by a drug and who knows both versions of the world could compare and describe the differences of the perceptual states. A well-known case of this type is that of Aldous Huxley. Huxley was driven to understand the mystery of human consciousness by finding ways to free the mind from the limitations restricting its access to the universe. He was very much interested in science, religion, and art. Huxley documented his experiences of taking the mind-altering drug mescaline to experience for himself how it changes the quality of consciousness, indoors of perception. When given a chance, Huxley welcomed the experiment with mescaline, the drug that was considered unique among other drugs. Administered in the right doses, mescaline was said to change the quality of consciousness more profoundly, and yet it was less toxic than other substances. I have neither expertise nor authority to make any conclusions. We will focus here only on the similarities of certain experiences to autism, which may bring valuable insights into our investigation. Some drugs can produce remarkable exaggerations of sensitivity, making the world appear far more real and vivid than in real life. Yet again, there is no consensus on the status of these experiences. Some consider them subjective, while others are sure that the psychedelic dimension is objective, with each person bringing something to it, but that it cannot be described verbally, as we have no concepts which are natural for that world. McKenna in Sheldrake, 205. It seems virtually certain that I shall never know what it feels like to be someone else. On the other hand, it had always seemed to me possible that through hypnosis, for example, or auto-hypnosis, by means of systematic meditation, or else by taking the appropriate drug, I might so change my ordinary mode of consciousness as to be able to know from the inside what the visionary, the medium, even the mystic were talking about. Huxley, 1954. According to Huxley, mescaline lowers the efficiency of the brain as an instrument for focusing the mind on the problems of everyday life and permits the entry into consciousness of certain classes of mental events, which are normally excluded because they possess no survival value. Huxley, 1956. Huxley shows the effects of mescaline on brain functioning, which do not include the interference in intellectual functioning, as follows. the ability to remember and to think straight is little, if at all, reduced, unlike under the influence of alcohol. Visual impressions are greatly intensified, and the eye recovers some of the perceptual innocence of childhood, when the sensum was not immediately and automatically subordinated to the concept. Huxley, 1954. There are some side effects of mescaline, such as, for example, withdrawal and loss of interest in the outside world. While the ego grows weak, he can't be bothered to undertake the necessary chores and loses all interests in those spatial and temporal relationships which mean so much to an organism bent on getting on in the world. As mind at large seeps past the no longer watertight valve, all kind of biologically useless things start to happen. In some cases, there may be extrasensory perceptions. Other persons discover a world of visionary beauty. To others, again, is revealed the glory, the infinite value and meaningfulness of naked existence, of the given unconceptualized event. In the final stage of egolessness, there is an obscure knowledge that all is in all, that all is actually each. Huxley, 1954. Huxley hypothesizes that mescaline seems to have a power of impair the efficiency of the cerebral reducing valve, reducing filtering ability, and to bring forth cleansed perception. The experiences of non-autistic people like Huxley, for example, and high-functioning autistic individuals who can articulate them, can help us understand the abilities and problems of those non-verbal autistic individuals who struggle to communicate their differences. It is important to remember that the experiences induced by chemicals or chemical changes in the body last only for a few hours. People involved just visit a different sensory perceptual world as tourists visiting a different culture while maintaining their own. However, there are people who are born and grow up in different perceptual worlds, for whom the different language-less world of being isness is home. For autistic individuals, for example, this unconceptualized world is the one they were born into. Some can develop abilities to leave it, even if temporarily, to visit the world of the majority, but some never get a visa to cross the border, and they stay in their world most of their lives. It had been the same as long as I had known. Some things hadn't changed. Since I was an infant, swept up in the perception of swirling air particles, a child lost in repetition of a pattern of sound, or a teenager staring for hours at colored billiard balls, trying to grasp the experience of the particular color I was climbing into. Donna Williams, 1999. Notes. A drug-induced state of consciousness gives an insight into the abilities and problems of those nonverbal autistic individuals who struggle to communicate their differences. In Tibetan tradition, the process of self-cultivation is conceived. What is often classified as psychiatric illness in Western medicine is seen in Tibetan medical practice as lung imbalance. Much of the specifically religious imagery of Buddhism can be of relevance to some people with ASD. Similar experiences, though rare, can be achieved in a relaxed brain state. For example, consider the experience of an American scientist, C. King, who was waiting on a New Jersey railway platform. Suddenly, the entire aspect of the surroundings changed. The whole atmosphere seemed strangely vitalized, and abruptly, the few other persons on the platform took on an appearance hardly more important or significant than that of the doorknobs at the entrance to the passengers' waiting room. But the most extraordinary alteration was that of the dun-colored bricks. They remained naturally dun-colored bricks, for there was no concomitant sensory illusion in the experience, but all at once they appeared to be tremendously alive. Without manifesting any exterior motion, they seemed to be seething almost joyously inside, and gave the distinct impression that in their own degree they were living and actively liking it. King, 1963. So for me, I had a so-called spontaneous, non-ordinary state of consciousness several times. One in particular I remember fondly. It was in Glastonbury near the Tor, where I was laying in the grass during a break, and suddenly I was just felt with this sense of being unconditionally loved by Mother Earth, and I was at the same time the one loving. And it was a profound experience. It was beautiful. So for the first time, maybe in my life, I had the experience of unconditional love. And at other times, I just felt very connected through the heart with other people. I felt one with everybody. There was no separation, no difference. We were all equals. And the sense of love was so profound, I was even in love with the black pavement underneath my feet. Everything was just love and feeling loved. All oneness. And it was beautiful, even though short-lasting, but I will never forget that. In LSD, the lysergic acid component is derived from ergot, a wild fungus. LSD works by interfering with the thalamus, a part of the brain that interprets sights, smells, and sounds. A trip lasts about 12 hours and can boost levels of serotonin in the brain. When these levels drop, the user experiences a calm down. Some users experience a bad trip and feel terrified. LSD was discovered by Albert Hofmann, Swiss chemist, in 1938. The discovery was incidental but had huge consequences. In the 1960s, LSD began to be used first as a pathway to spiritual enlightenment, and then as a recreational drug. Though it was originally believed to be a wonder drug, the decades of its being available have shown that if it is foolishly used, to borrow Maslow's terms, LSD is dangerous and unpredictable. DMT is a psychoactive chemical that is naturally found in the human body in small quantities and also in many plants. It causes intense visions, as if the user has entered a completely different world that some consider a parallel universe, DMT-verse. For example, author Terence McKenna, who experimented with DMT, feels that right here and now, one quanta away, there is raging a universe of active intelligence that is transhuman, hyperdimensional, and extremely alien. What is driving religious feeling today is a wish for contact with this universe. Recently, MDMA has been discovered to treat trauma, and the results were just stunning. Talk therapy is great, but most people never get past the intellectual side of it. They never actually get past the words and into feeling their feelings. In my experience, MDMA helps people do exactly that. It facilitates the ultimate goal of talk therapy, which is healing trauma. Healing our deepest wounds, the holotropic paradigm shift. This title seems to capture the most important theoretical and practical insights from the research of holotropic states of consciousness. It shows that the human psyche is not limited to postnatal biography and the individual unconscious described by Freud. In the work with holotropic states induced by psychedelics and various non-drug means, as well as those occurring spontaneously, this model proves to be painfully inadequate to account for all the phenomena occurring in these states. We must drastically revise our understanding of the dimensions of the human psyche.
So, theory of mind does not explain autism. It is very helpful, right? But it does not explain autism. So what is in between the psychological theories and causes, right? And this is facts. It's not my idea. It is Bob Morris, a high-functioning adult with autism. And he said, our senses work differently. It means we have different perceptions. It means we develop different abilities. And it means we think differently. We all people have 7 senses. Vision, hearing, tactility, a sense of smell, sense of taste, proprioception and interoception, and vestibular system. By the way, any of these senses or a combination of the senses can be different in autism, work differently in autism. Especially proprioception is very, very important sense in autism. Proprioception, it is about our body awareness, how we move our limbs, how we sort of feel ourselves in our bodies. We know that many autistic people, adults and children, have problems with this. Some of them do not feel when their body ends and the environment begins.
First thought was, oh my gosh, I'm having a stroke. And then the next thought was, wow, this is so cool. Our ability to...
As a Harvard-trained PhD specializing in human brain function, Taylor was excited at the opportunity to study her own brain in the process of degeneration. After pain came a kind of elation.
I felt more connected to a fluidity and a grace of my presence that I had never known before. I was actually in euphoria.
With the analytical, rational left hemisphere of her brain traumatized, Taylor says her consciousness shifted into the right hemisphere.
The right hemisphere is one big moment, one big possibility.
Sea of tranquility.
It was. I was in absolute tranquility. It was so peaceful.
Taylor lost her ability to speak. She couldn't read or write or walk. She couldn't even recognize her own mother.
I literally felt as though I was a newborn. I knew nothing. Had no concept of family, had no concept of Jill Bolte Taylor, had no concept of the brain.
And there was something else, insight.
You can choose in any situation to look at it through the filter of the left hemisphere, which is going to be with judgment. But at any time, we can shut that down and then just come to the present moment and say, but I'm alive. Wow, I'm alive.
Her message? People can choose to live a more peaceful, compassionate life by hooking into that brain circuitry and stepping to the right.
Who could ask for more?